Toronto Blue Jays have signed Isiah Kiner-Falefa to a 2-year deal, and he's going to have a defined role with this Blue Jays team. He's going to run, he's going to play defense, and he's going to play maybe 2 or 3 times a week for this Blue Jays team. It's not the first move that they made this offseason, but it definitely won't be the last. So we'll break that down and much more on this episode of Jays Digest. What's up, Jays fans? I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse. Now, we're starting this video off with not the flashiest move by the Toronto Blue Jays. Isiah Kiner-Falefa, kind of mixed reviews by the Toronto Blue Jays fan base thus far after the signing was official. Not official yet, but it was basically made official by all the reports that came out. So Isiah Kiner-Falefa, solid player. He can play great defense at multiple positions. But where does he fit with this Blue Jays team? We're going to try to make the most sense of it. But Nick, this is not exactly the move that we envisioned this Blue Jays team making. I guess you could say it's kind of predictable. It's another under-the-radar type of move. But the big question is, what comes next after this Isiah Kiner-Falefa signing?
Yeah, it's not the flashiest move, but it's definitely not Shohei Ohtani, but it's something. Before we get into that, a quick reminder to hit the subscribe button. We're on the road to 12,000. I mean, you mentioned it. The deal seems, they're in an agreement. It's not official yet. Bench piece, utility guy heading in his age 29 season, former Ranger, former New York Yankee last season. Peter, what are your initial thoughts on this trade? I know you gave your brief thoughts there. Interesting guy. He's a utility player. I think he's going to fill the Whit Merrifield role, maybe with some better defense at all positions with a bit less hitting, but it's not flashy, it's not exciting, and I see a lot of Jays fans up in arms, as we also had Kevin Kiermaier yesterday, so maybe they're running it back to a degree with a couple of changes.
I don't know if they're going to run it back. I think they acknowledge that they need to make some big changes, because right now, as it stands, this Blue Jays team has not gotten any better whatsoever. They haven't gotten any better. But when I look at IKF, I look at that can play multiple positions at a very high level defensively. He can run the bases very well, but he's not a very good hitter. So what does this scream to me? It's like basically it's a Santiago Espinal replacement. That's what it looks like to me. Someone who's going to play better defense, who you won't have to rely on for his bat, but someone that you need on the roster. So in my opinion, this makes Santiago Espinal expendable. I don't know what his trade value is. I don't picture him having too much trade value, but I do suspect that they'll get something done in that regard, because I believe IKF was brought in to replace his role. Look, Espinal is an okay ball player. He does everything okay. He doesn't do anything great, but with IKF, you know that you're getting great defense and you're getting very good speed. So this, to me, says that Espinal's on the trade block, and he's probably going to get moved soon. And the other thing that it tells me is that Cavan Biggio is probably going to be an everyday player. We don't know which position yet, but he's probably going to be in that lineup every day, which is why they wanted to get another versatile guy to cover for when Biggio is most likely playing second base every night.
Yeah, I agree. And the Espinal, he might be on his way out. We have a couple of thoughts here. I'll just pop them on the screen. Basically, says IKF is the Whit Merrifield replacement with way better defense. That's one opinion. The other one is, like you said, it could be an Espinal. Outclasses Espinal as an infield defender and pinch runner. Again, Espinal is an interesting guy, especially when you bring up this. There's some concerns a lot of Jays fans are having about, I guess, the approach of Ross Atkins this offseason. He is a great fielder. The question is, Peter, last season we signed Kevin Kiermaier, and none of us thought he was going to be an everyday player. Is there a world where IKF, who hasn't put up an above 700 OPS, at least not in the past 3 years, is there a world where he becomes an everyday player for the Toronto Blue Jays? I don't know. I'd like to think not. Maybe he plays in the Santiago Espinal role like last year, where he played in 90 to 100 games and got a bunch of appearances, especially pinch running and, of course, going as a defensive replacement. But he's not a guy who excites me with the bat. He's not a guy who excites me with much besides, I guess, fielding. He's a very solid fielder. But I guess you can't have too many utility guys on the Blue Jays. But, again, this is, as long as there's a move to come and probably a Santiago Espinal trade, I won't be too upset.
I'm not huge on the deal because it's 2 years, and that's blocking some playing time from other guys as well. I don't think he's going to be an everyday player. I highly doubt it. I just don't think there's any way that the Blue Jays front office brought him in to be that everyday guy. But when I do see him, I see him in that role that maybe Addison Barger could have filled as soon as this year. I see him in a role that will take at-bats away from Aurelvis Martinez if he's killing it in AAA and he gets called up midseason. So I'm not huge on the deal, but if he's brought in to maybe get rid of some other players that are of no use to the Toronto Blue Jays, like an Espinal or Whit Merrifield, so be it. I'm good with that. But this move cannot be the last one, because as it stands right now, this Blue Jays team is worse than it was the year before, and everyone else in the division got better pretty much. So you can't run it back with this same team. You got to make a big time addition, and that big time addition is a bat. You got to get a massive power bat, and then the offseason, I think, would be considered a success.
Yeah, and Shadavidi had that article a week or two ago, and some people are reading between the lines. It basically said that maybe small additions, they run it back and hope on some internal growth from Vladdy, from Bo, from all these guys, and then just kind of complement them a little bit with pieces, like you said, like Isiah Kiner-Falefa, I guess, is a type piece. But the biggest concern for me going forward is what are the moves they make next. This is lining up for an Espinal trade. It's lining up for a potential, potential DH. The DH spot is still open, so whether that's Jorge Soler can play a bit of outfield, JD Martinez, any of these guys could be up for grabs now if you're the Toronto Blue Jays. And again, not the most exciting signing, but I like to think that this is something of a bigger magnitude to come. But again, there is some concerns about the defense approach. Maybe they're prioritizing defense, because both of the guys we've signed now, and I'll get your opinion on Kevin Kiermaier quickly before we wrap up in a sec, but both the guys we've signed now have been defensively minded first. The Kevin Kiermaier is great value. IKF is a defensive minded first guy. You have to think they have another move planned, specifically regarding a power bat. At this point, you can afford to have a poor defensive player in Jorge Soler, or someone who doesn't even play the defense in JD Martinez. So I don't know. It's a little scary, but I think we'll be good. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I'm just wondering where this leaves Davis Schneider as well, because we haven't really mentioned him, and I think that is someone who has big time upside when it comes to power potential, and he is someone that could help out the Toronto Blue Jays next year in their lineup. So I'm wondering, does this take away at bats from Davis Schneider? Are the Blue Jays front office maybe not as high as we are on him? So there's a lot of questions to be answered. Hopefully Ross Atkins has those answers. But you're right, Nick. They can't just bring these two guys in and call it an offseason. The pitching is good. The defense is good. Those aren't the problems. I mean, you're addressing the defense, and that's not the thing that needs to be addressed here. What needs to be addressed is that lineup, and there are considerable holes. Sure, you could be banking on a bounce-back season for Vladdy, and just a continuation for Bo, and a bounce-back season from George Springer. But what if you don't get that? Then where do you go? Where do you pivot when it's too late mid-season and your guys are struggling again and you're near the bottom of the offensive categories? Where do you go there? So I don't think the Blue Jays are going to leave it up to that, leave it up to chance. I do believe that those guys will bounce back, but they do need some additions. Having a good power bat in that lineup, adding a power bat will help them in their quest to bounce back, because as it stands right now, not too confident in the offense that this team is providing.
Yeah, we're still need to make a decision on third base. Matt Chapman, there's a lot of moves left, and we'll cover you for them all. Let us know in the comment section what your thoughts are on this this interesting and quite surprising signing. I didn't think that we were actually going to go ahead and get Kiner-Falefa, but that'll wrap up the video. If you want to check out our video from yesterday, click on your screen now, and we'll see you tomorrow.